The throne room of the Xerian royal palace shimmered like a frozen storm, walls of polished obsidian veined with molten gold, arching high into a vaulted ceiling where constellations of bioluminescent flora pulsed in slow, rhythmic breaths. At its heart, seated upon a throne carved from the fossilized spine of a long-dead star beast, sat Queen Varissa of House Nixery. Her skin, pale as moonlight on snow, contrasted sharply with the cascade of crimson hair that tumbled past her shoulders like spilled flame. Her eyes, slitted, luminous, the color of burning embers, narrowed as she stared down the lone figure standing defiantly at the foot of her dais. Clad in battered combat armor, scorched and dented from recent skirmishes beyond the palace walls, the human stood motionless, helmet sealed, breath muffled behind the visor. Around him, a dozen royal guards, tall, sinewy warriors with iridescent scales tracing their forearms and necks, held plasma lances trained on his chest, their stances tense, fingers twitching near triggers. "Remove your helmet, human," Varissa hissed, her voice a low thrum that vibrated through the polished floor, "or I'll kill you where you stand." Silence stretched like taut wire. The air smelled of ozone and the faint metallic tang of fear sweat. The human didn't flinch. He simply reached up, fingers brushing the release latch at the base of his helmet. A soft hiss escaped as the seal broke, and with deliberate slowness, he lifted the helmet away. Varissa's breath caught. Time seemed to stutter. The guards froze mid-step. Even the ambient hum of the palace's energy conduits dimmed, as if holding its breath. Before her stood not some nameless invader, not a spy or assassin sent by the rival Zenthari syndicate, but him, Joran Vale, the man who, 10 cycles ago, had dragged her bleeding body from the wreckage of a downed skiff on the sulfur plains of Krell 7, shielding her from a hail of ion fire with nothing but a shattered shield generator and sheer, stupid courage. The man who'd stitched her wounds with field thread while humming an off-key earth lullaby, who'd shared his last nutrient bar when she could barely lift her head, who'd vanished before she could even ask his name. Her claws, long, obsidian-sharp, usually poised to rend flesh, trembled at her sides. "You?" she whispered, the word barely audible, stripped of all its earlier venom. "You're alive." Joran offered a lopsided grin, the kind that crinkled the corners of his eyes and made him look both roguish and utterly exhausted. "Surprise?" he said, voice rough but warm, like gravel wrapped in velvet. "Though I gotta say, your welcome committee's gotten a bit stabby since last time." A ripple of confusion passed through the guards. One lowered his lance an inch, then quickly raised it again under Varissa's sharp glance. But her gaze never left Joran's face. She rose from her throne, robes of woven starlight trailing behind her, and descended the dais with slow, measured steps. Each footfall echoed like a heartbeat in the vast chamber. She stopped mere inches from him, close enough to see the fresh scar cutting through his left eyebrow, the faint lines of fatigue etched around his mouth, the stubborn set of his jaw that hadn't changed a bit. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice low now, stripped of royal command, almost vulnerable. "After all this time? After you disappeared like smoke on a solar wind?" Joran's grin faded, replaced by something heavier. He glanced past her, toward the towering arched windows that overlooked the capital city of Nixera, a sprawling metropolis of crystalline spires and floating gardens, now shadowed by the ominous silhouette of a Zenthari dreadnought hovering in low orbit. "Heard you were in trouble," he said simply. "Again." Varissa's eyes flashed. "I do not need saving, human. I am queen of the Xerian Concord. I command legions. Legions who just let a dreadnought park itself in your backyard without so much as a parking ticket." Joran shot back, raising an eyebrow. "Look, Varissa. Can I call you Varissa? I didn't come here for a history lesson or a royal ego massage. I came because the Zenthari aren't just flexing. They've got something new, something nasty. And if you think your plasma lances and fancy throne are going to stop it, you're dumber than you look." A gasp rippled through the guards. Insulting the queen was punishable by neural flaying. But Varissa didn't order his execution. Instead, a slow, dangerous smile spread across her lips, one that held both amusement and the promise of violence. "Still as charmingly blunt as ever, I see. Tell me, Joran Vale, what makes you think I'd trust you now? You vanished without a word. Left me wondering if you were dead, or worse, working for them." He met her gaze squarely, no flinch, no evasion. "Because I'm standing here with my helmet off, aren't I? If I were Zenthari, I'd have blown the palace sky-high the second I cleared the outer shields, or poisoned your wine, or seduced your chancellor." Humans are sneaky like that. He paused, then added with a wink, though I hear your chancellor's allergic to charm. Verissa let out a short, sharp laugh. Unexpected, unguarded, startled even her. She turned away, pacing toward the window, her crimson hair catching the dim light like fire. The Zenthari have deployed a new weapon, she admitted, voice tight. A resonance bomb. Not kinetic. Not explosive. It targets neural pathways, specifically the Xerian resonance frequency. One detonation in the capital, and every Xerian within 100 clicks would be reduced to a drooling, mindless husk. Our scientists say it's unblockable. Our shields can't filter it. Our warriors can't fight it. Joran whistled low. Nasty. Real nasty. So what's the plan? Evacuate. There is no time, she said bitterly. The dreadnought moves into optimal firing position at dawn. Less than 6 hours. Evacuation would take days. We'd lose millions. Silence settled again, thick and heavy. Joran rubbed the back of his neck, a habit he'd had since Verissa first saw him patching up a busted thruster with duct tape and hope. There's always a way, he murmured, more to himself than to her. Then his eyes lit up. Wait, the old Krell 7 skiff? You still have it? Verissa frowned. It's in the Royal Museum. A relic. Why? Because that relic had a prototype phase shield generator, Joran said, stepping closer, energy crackling in his voice. The kind that scrambles resonance frequencies. It fried itself, saving us back then, but the core's still intact. If your engineers can jury-rig it into a broadcast array, amplify it citywide, it might just scramble the bomb signal long enough to buy you time. Hope flickered in Verissa's eyes, then dimmed. Even if they could, the dreadnought's jamming all outgoing signals. We can't activate the array remotely. Someone would have to go up there. Manually. Someone like me? Joran grinned again. That reckless, infuriating grin that had somehow kept her alive on Krell 7. You die, she said flatly. The dreadnought's defenses are impenetrable. Yeah, well, he shrugged, pulling his helmet back on with a soft click. I've died before. Never stuck. Before she could argue, alarms blared through the palace. Deep, guttural horns that signaled breach. The main doors groaned open, not by royal command, but by force. Through the smoke and shattered plasteel strode a figure clad in sleek, black Zenthari armor, flanked by a squad of elite shock troopers. His face was hidden behind a smooth, featureless mask, but his voice, cold, synthetic, dripping with condescension, cut through the chaos. Queen Verissa, the figure intoned. Your defiance ends now. Surrender the city, or watch it unravel from within. Verissa's claws extended fully, her posture shifting from regal to predatory in an instant. You will not take Nixera, Zorvok. Zorvok, Joran muttered under his breath. Seriously? That's his name? Sounds like a sneeze. The Zenthari commander turned his masked head toward Joran. And who is this? A pet? How quaint. Joran stepped forward, placing himself between Verissa and the intruders. Actually, he said, voice dropping into that calm, deadly tone Verissa remembered from the battlefield. I'm the guy who's about to ruin your whole damn day. What followed was a blur of motion. Joran moved like lightning, ducking under a plasma bolt, grabbing a fallen guard's lance, and using it to vault over an incoming trooper. He slammed the butt of the weapon into another's helmet, then spun, firing a precise shot that overloaded the energy core of a third. Verissa joined the fray, her movements a deadly dance of grace and fury. Claws rending armor, kicks shattering knee joints, her red hair a whip of flame in the chaos. Together, they fought back to back. A seamless rhythm born of shared survival, of trust forged in blood and silence. But Zorvok hadn't come alone. More troops poured in, and the tide began to turn. Joran took a glancing blow to the shoulder, grunting as he staggered. Verissa bled from a gash on her temple, her breath coming in sharp gasps. They were being overwhelmed. We need to fall back, Joran yelled over the din, shoving a trooper into a pillar. To where? Verissa snapped, parrying a vibroblade with her forearm guard. The skiff hangar. Now! With a final, desperate surge, they broke through the encircling line, sprinting down corridors lit by emergency strobes. Behind them, Zorvok's voice echoed, cold and certain. You cannot run forever, Queen. Dawn comes for us all. They reached the museum hangar, a vast chamber housing relics of Xerian history. And there, Nestled under a dust cover, sat the Krell 7 skiff, its hull still scorched from their last escape. Joran didn't hesitate. He leapt into the cockpit, fingers flying over the controls with practiced ease. Varissa followed, sealing the hatch behind her just as Zenthari forces breached the hangar doors. The skiff sputtered to life, engines coughing before roaring. It shot upward through a retractable roof, bursting into the night sky just as the first rays of dawn began to stain the horizon. Below, the Zenthari dreadnought loomed like a black god, its weapon ports glowing ominously. "All right, hotshot," Varissa said, strapping into the co-pilot seat, her voice tight but steady. "How do we stop a city-killing bomb with a museum piece?" Joran tapped a cracked console screen. "We don't stop it. We confuse it. The phase cores still got a charge, just enough for one burst. We fly straight at that dreadnought, get close enough to override their jamming, and broadcast the scramble signal right into their weapons targeting matrix. It'll fry their systems long enough for your fleet to move in." "That's suicide," she said flatly. "Only if we miss," he replied, flashing her that grin again. "Besides, you owe me a proper thank you for Krell 7. This'll be your chance." She stared at him, this human who'd saved her life twice now, who walked into death like it was just another Tuesday. And for the first time in years, Queen Varissa of House Nixari felt something other than duty or rage. She felt hope, and maybe, just maybe, something dangerously close to affection. "Fine," she said, gripping the armrests. "But if we survive this, you're getting a medal, and a very long lecture on proper royal etiquette." Joran laughed, banking the skiff hard toward the dreadnought. "Deal. But only if the medal's edible. I'm starving." As the tiny skiff hurtled toward the monstrous warship, dawn breaking over Nixara in a blaze of gold and crimson, neither spoke again. There was no need. The hum of the engines, the glow of the rising sun, the shared silence between two warriors who'd found each other twice across the stars. That was enough. For now, the dreadnought's weapon ports flared to full charge. The resonance bomb began its final sequence. And Joran Vale, with a queen at his side and a death wish in his heart, pushed the throttle to maximum. The sky burned. The skiff shuddered violently as it pierced the dreadnought's outer defense grid, alarms shrieking like wounded birds. Plasma fire streaked past the cockpit, so close Joran could feel the heat through the reinforced canopy. Varissa gripped the console, her knuckles white, eyes locked on the dreadnought's central spire, the heart of its weapon array. "They're charging the resonance emitter," she shouted over the roar of engines and incoming fire. "We have less than 90 seconds. Joran didn't answer. His hands moved with the precision of someone who danced with death more times than he cared to count. He banked hard left, dodging a barrage that vaporized a chunk of the city's orbital ring behind them. "Hold on," he yelled, and slammed the skiff into a barrel roll that sent Varissa's stomach lurching into her throat. But then, disaster. A direct hit to the starboard thruster. The skiff yawed wildly, alarms blaring a new, more desperate tone. Smoke curled from the dashboard. "We're losing altitude," Varissa cried, her voice edged with panic for the first time. Joran gritted his teeth. "Not yet, we're not." With a grunt, he rerouted auxiliary power to the stabilizers, coaxing the dying ship into a shaky glide. "We don't need to land. We just need to get close enough for the phase core to broadcast." Varissa stared at him, this reckless, impossible human who treated near-certain death like a minor scheduling conflict. And in that moment, something shifted inside her. Not just gratitude, not just alliance. Something deeper, warmer, terrifying in its vulnerability. "Joran," she said softly, "if we don't make it, don't..." He cut in, not looking at her, eyes fixed on the dreadnought's glowing core. "I hate goodbyes, especially the dramatic ones." She swallowed hard, then reached over and placed her hand on his. Her skin was cool, smooth, humming faintly with Zirian bioenergy. He glanced at her, surprised. She gave the smallest nod. No words, just trust. The skiff plunged toward the dreadnought's underbelly, weaving through anti-air turrets like a ghost. At 50 meters out, Joran triggered the phase core. A pulse of shimmering blue energy erupted from the skiff's belly, a wave of chaotic resonance that rippled outward like a stone dropped in a quantum pond. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then chaos. The dreadnought convulsed. Lights flickered. Weapon ports sputtered and died. The resonance bomb's charge destabilized. Its frequency scrambled into useless static. On the bridge of the Zenthari command ship, Zorvok screamed orders into a dead comm system as his entire network collapsed. Back in the skiff, Joran whooped. It worked, but their victory was short-lived. The skiff, critically damaged, began its final descent. Not toward the palace, but toward the toxic marshes on the city's eastern rim. "Brace!" Joran yelled as they slammed into the muck with a bone-jarring crunch. Silence. Then coughing. Then groaning. Varissa pushed herself up, spitting out swamp water that smelled of sulfur and decay. "Remind me never to trust your flying again." Joran lay sprawled beside her, one arm dangling in the muck, grinning weakly. "Hey, we're alive. That counts as a win in my book." She helped him sit up, wincing at the gash on his temple. "You're bleeding." "So are you," he pointed out, nodding at the tear in her royal robes, now stained with mud and blood. They limped through the marshes for hours, avoiding Zenthari patrols that scoured the area for survivors. The city was in chaos, half celebrating the dreadnought's sudden deactivation, half terrified it was a trick. By dawn's full light, they reached the outskirts of Nixera, where loyalist rebels, led by Varissa's younger sister, Lyra, had set up a hidden resistance camp in the ruins of an old hydro farm. Lyra, a fierce warrior with white skin like Varissa's but hair the deep violet of twilight, nearly skewered Joran on sight. "You brought a human into our sanctuary?" she hissed, blade at his throat. "He saved the city," Varissa said coldly, stepping between them. "And my life, twice." Lyra's eyes narrowed, but she lowered her blade. Still, suspicion clung to her like mist. Over the next few days, as the city teetered on the edge of civil war, some factions demanding surrender to the Zenthari, others calling for all-out rebellion, Joran and Varissa found themselves drawn closer. They argued over tactics in the dim light of the rebel bunker. She mocked his primitive earth idioms. He teased her about royal formalities. "Do you have to bow every time you say, 'Your Majesty'? Even when you're eating?" But beneath the banter, something tender grew. A quiet understanding, a shared rhythm of glances and silences. One night, as they stood on the roof of the hydro farm, watching the dreadnought hover like a vulture over their home, Varissa finally asked the question that had haunted her. "Why did you leave Krell 7 without saying goodbye?" Joran was quiet for a long time. Then, "Because I knew if I stayed, I'd never leave. And you had a throne to reclaim, a people to lead. I was just a mercenary with a busted ship and a death wish. I didn't belong in your world." "You do," she said fiercely. "You always did." He looked at her then, really looked, and for the first time didn't hide the ache in his eyes. "Maybe. But worlds like yours don't have room for men like me." Before she could respond, a rebel scout burst onto the roof, breathless. "My queen, Zorvok." "He's not Zorvok." The revelation hit like a plasma bolt. The masked commander wasn't Zenthari at all. He was Zirian, a traitor from House Vexus, Varissa's own bloodline, thought extinct after the Purge Wars. His name was Kalen Vexus, no relation to the forbidden human names. This was a Zirian noble, and he'd been working with the Zenthari for years, feeding them intelligence, sabotaging defenses, all to reclaim the throne he believed was stolen from his ancestors. Worse, he'd engineered the resonance bomb himself using stolen Zirian biotech and Zenthari engineering. And now, with the dreadnought disabled but still armed, he'd activated a failsafe, a secondary device hidden deep within the palace itself, set to detonate at high noon. "He plans to kill us all?" Lyra whispered, horrified. "Then blame the Zenthari and seize power in the chaos." Varissa's face hardened into marble. "Then we stop him. Inside the palace." Joran exhaled. "Of course we do. Because sneaking into a fortress crawling with traitors and bomb squads is exactly what I wanted to do today. But this time they wouldn't go alone. Lyra rallied the rebels, 24 hardened fighters, loyal to the crown. They moved under cover of a citywide blackout Joran helped engineer by hacking the orbital grid. Slipping through service tunnels and forgotten maintenance shafts, they infiltrated the palace from below, emerging in the catacombs beneath the throne room. There, in the ancient burial vaults of Zirian kings, they found Kalen. He stood before a pulsing orb of crimson energy, the resonance core, wired into the palace's central nervous system. His mask was off now, revealing sharp, aristocratic features and eyes burning with centuries of resentment. "Sister," he sneered as Varissa stepped into the chamber. "Come to witness the rebirth of House Vexus? You've dishonored our blood," Varissa said, voice trembling with rage. "You've betrayed our people." "I've saved them," Kalen roared, From your weakness, from your obsession with peace. The galaxy respects only strength and fear. Today, Nixera becomes feared. Joran moved quietly to the side, scanning the bomb's wiring. It was complex, biolocked, tied to Kalen's neural signature. Disarm it wrong and it would detonate instantly. Varissa advanced, claws extended. This ends now, brother. What followed was a duel of fire and fury. Sibling against sibling, legacy against legacy. Varissa fought with controlled precision. Kalen with wild, desperate aggression. Sparks flew as claws met vibroblades. Stone cracked under their blows. Lyra and the rebels held off Kalen's loyalists at the chamber's entrance, buying time. Joran, meanwhile, worked frantically. He'd found the primary override node, but it required a living Xerian neural imprint to deactivate. And the only ones present were Varissa and Kalen. He looked up just as Kalen landed a brutal kick to Varissa's ribs, sending her crashing into a pillar. Blood trickled from her lip. She struggled to rise. "No!" Joran shouted, and did the only thing he could think of. He lunged not at Kalen but at the bomb. Grabbing a severed power conduit, he jammed it into the core's feedback loop. The system shrieked in protest. Warning glyphs flared red. The bomb began to overload. "What have you done, human?" Kalen snarled, turning toward him. "Gave your sister a chance?" Joran gasped, smoke rising from his gloves. The chamber shook. Cracks spiderwebbed across the walls. The bomb was going critical, but slowly. They had minutes, not seconds. Varissa staggered to her feet, eyes blazing. With a cry of pure fury, she launched herself at Kalen. This time, there was no hesitation, no mercy. Her claws found his throat. Kalen gasped, blood bubbling between his fingers. "You always were stronger," he choked out, then collapsed. Varissa stood over him, breathing hard, tears mixing with blood on her face. Then she turned to Joran. "We have to go. Now." But Joran was already at the core, pulling wires, rerouting circuits. "I can stabilize it," he said through gritted teeth. "But I need to stay. Someone has to hold the feedback loop." "No," Varissa said instantly. "We leave it. The palace can be rebuilt. The city can't survive another resonance pulse," he shot back. "Not this close. Millions will die, Varissa. You know that." Their eyes locked. In that moment, everything unspoken passed between them. The shared battles, the quiet nights, the laughter in the ruins, the way he always made her feel like more than a queen, like a person. And the terrible, beautiful truth. He was willing to die for her world. She stepped forward, placed her hands on his shoulders. "Then I stay with you." "You can't," he said gently. "Your people need their queen. And I need you," she whispered, voice breaking. He smiled, a sad, soft thing. "Then come back for me, after it's safe. Promise me." She kissed him then, fierce, desperate, full of everything she couldn't say. Then she turned and ran, dragging Lyra with her as the chamber collapsed behind them. Outside, the sky turned white, but the city did not fall. When the dust settled, the palace was half ruined, but standing. The resonance core had imploded inward, contained by Joran's last-minute reroute. And deep in the catacombs, beneath tons of rubble, a faint signal blinked on a rescue drone scanner. Varissa led the dig herself, clawing through stone with her bare hands until they found him. Alive, barely, pinned under a fallen archway, one arm crushed, but breathing. She cradled his head in her lap, tears streaming down her face. "You idiot," she whispered. "You beautiful, reckless idiot." Joran opened his eyes, dazed but smiling. "Did I miss lunch?" She laughed through her tears. "For that, you're getting 2 medals, and a lifetime supply of nutrient bars." As the sun set over a wounded but unbroken Nixera, Queen Varissa made a decree. No more hiding, no more fear. The Xerian Concord would stand open to allies, human, alien, anyone who fought for peace with courage in their heart. And at her side, once he could walk again, would stand Joran Vale, not as a mercenary, not as a savior, but as something new. Something neither of them had dared name yet. But the galaxy was vast, and peace was fragile. Rumors whispered of Zenthari warlords gathering beyond the Vale Nebula, of ancient weapons waking in dead stars, of a shadow council pulling strings from the void. Their story wasn't over. It was just beginning. Years passed like starlight across the velvet dark, swift, shimmering, and full of quiet miracles. The scars of war on Nixera slowly healed, not by forgetting, but by building something new atop the ashes. The royal palace, once a symbol of isolation and ancient bloodlines, was rebuilt with open archways and gardens that welcomed not just Xerians, but humans, Zenthari defectors, and wanderers from 100 worlds. At the heart of it all stood Queen Varissa, and beside her, no longer a guest, no longer a soldier for hire, but Joran Vale, consort of the Concord, hero of the Resonance Crisis, and, most importantly to her, the man who still left his boots in the hallway and forgot to turn off the gravity lamps. Their wedding was nothing like the stiff, ceremonial unions of old Xerian tradition. It was held in the very marshes where they'd crashed that battered skiff, now transformed into a sanctuary of floating lilies and bioluminescent willows. Varissa wore a gown woven from starlight silk and earth cotton, a gift from human diplomats, and Joran, clean-shaven for once and grumbling about collars, wore a tunic stitched with both Xerian glyphs and a tiny, hidden earth flag on the inside seam. Lyra officiated, rolling her eyes when Joran tripped over his vows but softening when he took Varissa's hands and said, voice rough with emotion, I've flown through fire for you. I do it again tomorrow. Today, I just promise to love you. Loudly, stubbornly, and always. And love they did. Their first child, a daughter named Sarah, was born with her mother's luminous ember eyes and her father's unruly dark curls. Though her skin shimmered faintly white, like moonstone kissed by dawn. She spoke her first word in 3 languages by age 2 and once reprogrammed the palace's cleaning drones to dance during dinner. Their second, a boy named Torin, inherited Joran's quick grin and Varissa's tactical mind. By 5, he'd built a hover sled from scrap parts and nearly launched himself into the palace fountain. 2 more followed, Lyra, quiet and brilliant, who could calm storms with a song, and Kale, a whirlwind of mischief who once convinced the royal guards that the throne was haunted. It wasn't. But the prank became legend. Life in the palace was never dull. Joran taught the children earth games, hide and seek among the floating gardens, soccer with anti-grav balls, and how to make pancakes that somehow always ended up on the ceiling. Varissa, in turn, schooled them in Xerian history, diplomacy, and the art of reading star charts by heart. They argued over bedtime stories. Joran insisted on space pirates. Varissa preferred tales of ancient queens, debated whether dessert came before or after politics. They compromised. After, but with extra syrup, and held weekly family councils, where even the youngest had a vote on matters like pet acquisitions. They now owned a 6-legged, purring lizard named Captain Fluff. Peace held, not because the galaxy had grown kinder, but because Nixera had grown wiser. Under Varissa and Joran's joint rule, the Concord became a beacon of alliance. Trade flourished. Old enemies became cautious friends. And whenever a new threat loomed, a rogue AI uprising, a pirate armada, a mysterious signal from the galactic core, it was met not with fear, but with unity. Joran still flew missions when needed, though now he always came home, often with souvenirs. A crystal from Andromeda for Sarah, a gravity compass for Torin, a songbird that sang in harmonic resonance for Lyra. One evening, decades after that fateful day in the throne room, Varissa and Joran sat on the palace's highest balcony, watching their grandchildren chase fireflies through the gardens below. His hair was silver now, hers streaked with strands of soft gold, but their hands still fit together like they were made to. The city glittered beneath them, alive, thriving, a testament to what could bloom when 2 broken souls chose to heal together. Remember when you threatened to kill me if I didn't take off my helmet? Joran asked, voice warm with amusement. Varissa leaned her head on his shoulder. I remember thinking you were the most infuriating creature I'd ever seen. And now, she smiled, eyes reflecting the twin moons rising over Nixera. Now I think you're the only one who ever truly saw me. Not the queen, not the warrior, just Varissa. He kissed her temple, gentle as starlight. And you saw the man behind the armor, even when I didn't believe he was worth seeing. Below, laughter rang out. Sarah's daughter had just launched a hovercake into Torin's son's face, sparking a full-blown dessert war. Varissa sighed, but her eyes sparkled. We're going to need more syrup. Joran chuckled, pulling her closer. Good thing I stocked up. And as the stars wheeled overhead, silent witnesses to a love forged in fire and tempered by time, the palace hummed with life, laughter, and the quiet, enduring promise of tomorrow. They had faced death, betrayal, and the weight of worlds, and in the end, they'd built something far more powerful. A family, a home, and a legacy written not in blood or battle, but in pancakes, pranks, an endless, unwavering love. And somewhere, in a dusty corner of the Royal Museum, the old Krell 7 skiff sat on display, its plaque reading, "This vessel carried hope when all seemed lost." Also, it once smelled faintly of burnt toast. It was, Joran always said with a wink, the most accurate historical record ever written. In the golden hush of twilight, Varissa and Joran stood hand in hand on the palace balcony, their silhouettes softened by time but their bond unshaken. Below, Nixera thrived, its spires gleaming, its people free, its future bright. Their children and grandchildren filled the gardens with laughter, weaving human songs with Xyrian lullabies beneath twin moons. The scars of war had long faded into stories told at bedtime, lessons wrapped in love rather than fear. Joran still teased Varissa about her royal posture. She still rolled her eyes at his earth slang, though she secretly adored it. They'd built more than a kingdom. They'd built a home where differences weren't just tolerated but celebrated. Diplomats from 100 worlds came not just to negotiate, but to witness the miracle of unity embodied in one unlikely pair. Even old enemies sent gifts on their anniversary: Zenthri silk, Terran wine, flowers that bloomed only in zero gravity. Their love had become legend, not for its grandeur, but for its stubborn, everyday tenderness. They argued over star charts, shared silent mornings sipping spiced tea, and danced in the rain when no one was watching. When Joran's step slowed with age, Varissa walked beside him, her hand never leaving his. When her dreams grew haunted by old battles, he'd hum that off-key lullaby from Krell 7 until peace returned. They never sought glory, only each other, and the quiet joy of a life well shared. On their 50th anniversary, they renewed their vows beneath the same willow where they'd married, surrounded by generations whose very existence defied the odds. And when, many years later, they passed within days of each other, Joran first with Varissa whispering, "Wait for me," and she soon after, smiling as if she'd just found him again. The entire Concord mourned, but their legacy endured. In laws that valued compassion over conquest, in classrooms where human and Xyrian children learned side by side, in every act of courage rooted in kindness. Their tomb bore no titles, only 2 names entwined, and the words, "They chose love and changed everything." And high above, in the endless sky, a new star was named for them, not for how they died, but for how they lived, fiercely, fully, and together.